On February 21st, 2026, heavy rainfall caused widespread flooding across several Hawaiian Islands, with the most severe impacts on Kaua'i and Oahu. Persistent rain overwhelmed rivers, streams, and drainage systems, resulting in road closures, disruptions to travel, and localized flooding of homes and businesses. Flash flood warnings and flood watches were issued early in the morning to alert residents and authorities to rapidly changing conditions. The heavy rain began in the early hours on Kauai and persisted as radar indicated that rain was falling at rates sufficient to cause immediate flooding of waterways and low-lying areas. In the Hanalei region, the Hanalei River rose rapidly, pushing water across Kuhio Highway near the Hanalei River Bridge and forcing closure of that key transportation route because of significant water covering the roadway. Water levels on the river reached heights that typically lead to roadway overtopping and risk to vehicles and pedestrians. Kauai emergency management officials advised residents that drains, streams, and valleys were rapidly filling with runoff and urged the public to avoid approaching fast-flowing water. On Oahu, flooding was also widespread and disruptive. Rain gauges and radar observations recorded intense precipitation with frequent rainfall of 2 to 4 inches per hour. And in isolated bursts, a gauge near Waiahole recorded an instantaneous rainfall equivalent of 8.43 inches per hour, dropping more than 1.3 inches of rain in a matter of minutes. These high rates of precipitation produced rapid runoff and rising water levels in streams and drainage channels. The impact on transportation infrastructure on Oahu was significant. Several major roadways experienced flooding that limited or halted travel. For example, the Like Highway off-ramp toward Kaneohe was submerged by several feet of water, prompting temporary closure.
Straight to the ocean. Goodness.
Other windward and Mauka roadways saw standing water and rising runoff that impeded commuter traffic, and surface streets in residential zones accumulated water faster than storm drains could convey it. Stream bodies responded quickly to the heavy rain. On Oahu, Moanalua stream rose to a record flood stage of 10.76 feet, breaking a benchmark that had stood for more than a decade. This elevated level contributed to floodwater entering adjacent neighborhoods, including Mapuna Puna, Fort Shafter, Moanalua Gardens, and Moanalua Valley, where properties experienced water intrusion and officials monitored for further impacts. Local authorities issued safety instructions as conditions deteriorated. Motorists were repeatedly advised not to attempt to drive through flood-covered roads, and emergency messaging emphasized seeking higher ground if water levels were rising quickly. The Honolulu Zoo was closed for the day due to the hazardous weather and flooding conditions in the surrounding area. Flooding also prompted temporary evacuations and sheltering actions. On Oahu, officials issued an evacuation order for Otake Camp in Waialua, reflecting concern about rising water and potential risk to residents. This order was later lifted, and shelters were closed after conditions stabilized. On Kauai, the flood warning persisted for hours as heavy rainfall continued to cause overflowing of rivers, streams, and other low-lying areas. Water levels were sufficient to keep roads flooded and forced county officials to maintain partial closures while monitoring changing conditions. As the day progressed and rainfall rates decreased, some roadways were reopened. For example, Kuhio Highway near Hanalei River Bridge was eventually reopened to traffic when conditions allowed. Other islands in the region received heavy rain and experienced advisory-level impacts. Maui was placed under a flood advisory through the evening, as radar showed heavy rain over the windward West Maui Mountains, with rates of up to 2 inches per hour, particularly between Kahakoloa and Waihee. Molokai also saw rising water, particularly along Halawa Stream and windward coastal areas, leading to advisories for residents to remain cautious around waterways.
Hey! Oh!
Utilities and services were affected by the flood conditions. On Kauai, power outages occurred in some areas such as Haena, and utility crews worked throughout the morning to restore electricity to affected customers. Flood-induced damage to infrastructure required ongoing assessment by county and utility officials. The flooding challenges were not limited to transportation and utilities. Urban stormwater systems struggled to handle the concentrated rainfall, causing ponding on paved surfaces and creating hazardous conditions for pedestrians and vehicles. Flood watch notices remained active into the evening, as forecasters cautioned that elevated runoff and overflowing streams could continue to affect flood-prone roads and low-lying areas. Emergency management agencies continued to urge residents to avoid streams, drainage ditches, and culverts, even if they appeared dry between rain bands, and reiterated the standard safety principle that motorists should not cross fast-flowing water because depth and current can exceed expectations. Collectively, these actions reflected coordinated communication between the National Weather Service and local authorities aimed at reducing risk during rapidly evolving flood conditions. As rainfall rates diminished and storm systems shifted away later in the weekend, the immediate threat of widespread flooding decreased. Nevertheless, the February 21st flooding event highlighted the speed with which heavy rain can inundate infrastructure and populated areas on islands that are geographically varied and have complex drainage networks. Thanks for watching Severe Weather, where we break down the facts behind nature's most intense moments. If you found this video helpful, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support keeps this channel going. Hit the bell so you never miss a real, calm, and clear report. See you in the next one. Stay informed, stay safe.